8th of February, year 2000. A quiet Canadian suburb wrapped in snow. It's past midnight when the silence breaks. The whir of a modem hums from a second-story bedroom, green lights flickering like heartbeat monitors. Inside, a boy sits hunched over a glowing CRT monitor, eyes locked, fingers moving fast. His screen fills with command lines, cascading like falling code rain. And somewhere, hundreds of miles away, the world starts to glitch. Servers buckle, data packets pile up like traffic jams on invisible highways. On Wall Street, Yahoo, the most visited website on the planet, begins to choke under the weight of a storm no one can see. Millions of users refresh and refresh and refresh again. Nothing. Silence. Blank screens. The fifth largest company in the world, offline. Inside Yahoo's network command center, engineers shout over ringing phones. Are we under attack? No one knows yet. All they see are hundreds of thousands of junk requests hammering their servers per second, from everywhere, from nowhere. Within hours, CNN, eBay, Amazon all crash. Global commerce grinds to a halt. CNN's newsroom goes dark. The internet, once invincible, suddenly looks fragile. And back in that suburban bedroom, the boy leans back in his chair. He grins, not maliciously, more like someone who just discovered gravity by accident. He has no idea that his little experiment has just cost billions, drawn the attention of the FBI, and triggered one of the largest manhunts in cyber history. Outside, red and blue lights flash against the falling snow. By dawn, agents will be at his door. And when they walk inside, they won't find a criminal mastermind. They'll find a high school sophomore who still has algebra homework due. But how did a 15-year-old manage to cripple the internet's biggest giants from his bedroom? And what does his story reveal about the moment the digital world lost its innocence? This is the story of Mafiaboy, the teenager who took down the internet. Long before he became Mafiaboy, he was just Michael Clace, a quiet kid growing up in Montreal, Canada. He wasn't rich or famous or even particularly rebellious, but he was curious, dangerously curious. In the mid-90s, the internet was still a frontier. Dial-up tones filled homes, chat rooms buzzed with pseudonyms, and every click felt like exploration. For kids like Michael, it wasn't just a tool, it was a new planet, a place where rules didn't yet exist. Michael discovered hacking the same way most kids discovered video games. He joined chat rooms, trading jokes and code snippets with strangers who had names like Cyberwolf and Phantom. They weren't criminals, not at first. They were explorers, learning how websites worked, how data flowed, how to manipulate systems just to see if they could. To them, hacking wasn't destruction, it was creation, bending reality inside a machine. But somewhere along the line, curiosity evolved into competition. Online forums turned into battlegrounds. Groups began forming, small underground crews with names like Project Mayhem and the Legion of Doom. They competed for bragging rights. Who could deface a government site first? Who could take down a server the fastest? For a 15-year-old navigating adolescence and authority, it was intoxicating. Power, recognition, control. The things teenage life usually denied him, the internet offered freely. And Michael, he was a natural. He began experimenting with what hackers called denial of service, flooding a website with so much fake traffic that it crashes. At first, he tested on small forums, university networks. Then he scaled up, teaching compromised computers or zombies to join in the flood. What he created wasn't new, but the scale was. His attacks didn't come from one computer. They came from hundreds, maybe thousands of hijacked machines scattered across the globe, all sending useless data at once. It was called a distributed denial of service, or DDoS. And in early 2000, nobody, not even Silicon Valley's biggest players, knew how to stop it. Michael didn't realize that what he was building would soon trigger panic inside every major tech corporation on Earth. To him, it was still a game. That is, until the night the internet broke. It began on a cold Monday afternoon, February 7th, 2000. Inside Yahoo's San Jose headquarters, engineers were monitoring one of the busiest websites on Earth. Yahoo was the gateway to the internet. News, email, shopping, search, the digital heartbeat of the early web. At 10:30 a.m., alarms started ringing. Server traffic spiked, then spiked again. Within seconds, dashboards turned blood red. Data centers that usually handled a few million requests per hour suddenly saw billions. Logs flooded so fast that terminals froze before anyone could even diagnose the issue. At first, the engineers assumed it was a system error, a misconfiguration, maybe even a bug in the code. But when backup servers started falling one by one, it became clear. They weren't facing a glitch. They were under attack. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Montreal, the world's most unlikely saboteur was sitting in his bedroom, watching chaos unfold through a monitor that still hummed from static electricity. Michael Kelsey, mafiaboy, didn't have a mission. He wasn't stealing credit cards or selling secrets to governments. He was just testing the limits of a new program he'd written, one that could unleash thousands of computers against a single target at once. He picked Yahoo because it was the biggest. Because if you wanted to know if your code worked, you tested it on the world's strongest wall. His weapon was deceptively simple. He'd infected university networks, McGill, Harvard, even systems inside NASA's research labs, turning their computers into silent soldiers. When he pressed enter, those machines bombarded Yahoo's servers with endless requests, choking them in digital noise. For hours, Yahoo fought back. They rerouted traffic, shut down servers, tried to isolate the source, but every fix spawned a new flood. By afternoon, the site was offline. Millions of users were cut off. Traders couldn't check stocks. Students couldn't access emails. Advertisers lost millions in revenue. The press called it the day the internet stopped. But the attacks didn't end there. 2 days later, CNN.com went dark, then eBay, then Amazon, then Dell. Each time, the same invisible storm slammed into their servers like a tidal wave. The FBI's cybercrime division, still in its infancy, was scrambling. They had no roadmap for this. The concept of a denial-of-service attack was still theoretical to most investigators. They contacted top network engineers, encryption experts, even the NSA. Everyone had the same question. Who could possibly have the power to take down half the internet? The answer, when they found it, stunned them. They weren't chasing an elite state actor. They were chasing a 15-year-old kid in his pajamas. Investigators traced fragments of the attacks back to Canadian servers, then to a single ISP account registered under a teenager's name. The address led to a modest house in Montreal. Brick walls, snow-covered yard, a basketball hoop above the garage. The FBI contacted the RCMP, who watched the house for days. Every night, the same glow emanated from the upstairs window. Lines of code flickering in the dark, a shadow leaning close to the monitor. When they finally moved in, it wasn't with a SWAT team. It was quiet, deliberate, the sound of boots crunching on frozen snow. They knocked. Michael's father answered. By the time the agents reached the bedroom, Michael was still sitting at his desk. His computer fans were still spinning. He didn't resist. Didn't even seem surprised. One investigator would later recall, "He looked at us like we were late." As the agents collected his hardware, the beige tower, the CRT monitor, the pile of floppy disks, one of them noticed something odd. Taped to the wall above his desk was a hand-drawn diagram, circles and arrows connecting boxes labeled Yahoo, CNN, eBay, Amazon. It wasn't a map of targets. It was a scoreboard. Each crossed-out name represented a victory. And in that moment, the reality set in. This wasn't a man waging cyber war. It was a kid playing a game he didn't understand he was winning. When news broke that the person responsible for the largest cyber attack in history was a high school sophomore, the world laughed, then panicked. Politicians demanded new laws. Companies poured millions into cybersecurity overnight. The myth of the invincible internet shattered. Mafiaboy had shown that one curious teenager, armed with nothing but time and curiosity, could cripple global giants. But what no one realized yet, not the FBI, not Silicon Valley, not even Michael himself, was that this was only the beginning. Because what started as a game was about to become a turning point in cyber history. When the world heard about Mafiaboy, the name became legend overnight. A 15-year-old kid had done what governments couldn't. He had made the internet itself kneel. But behind that alias wasn't a prodigy born from darkness. It was just Michael, awkward, restless, and underestimated. In school, he was quiet. Not the loner stereotype, not the villain painted by newspapers, just invisible. The kind of kid who sat in the back of the class, doodling code instead of equations. His teachers thought he was distracted. In reality, he was building worlds behind his screen. Technology was his escape. While others played sports or hung out after class, Michael went home, logged into IRC chat rooms, and became someone else. Online, he was fearless, smart, powerful, respected. There, no one saw his age, only his handle, Mafiaboy. He joined hacker collectives, underground crews that mixed bravado with brilliance. They traded exploits the way kids traded baseball cards. Every night was a digital proving ground, a test of who could push further, go faster, outsmart more powerful systems. He learned from mentors he never met. One showed him how to use botnets, another explained packet floods. Together, they formed a global hive of shadow apprentices, children of a new frontier, inventing cyber warfare without even realizing it. But with every success came attention, bragging rights, reputation. And reputation was everything. It's what pushed him to go bigger. It's what made him type attackyahoo.com that night. He wanted recognition, not money, not chaos, just proof that he could do what adults said was impossible. After his arrest, Michael's world collapsed overnight. He wasn't taken to prison, not yet. He was taken home. But his name, his real name, was splashed across headlines around the world. Teen hacker paralyzes the internet. High school kid behind 1.7 billion meltdown. Is our digital future in the hands of children? The irony was cruel. He'd wanted attention, and now he had it. But not the kind you could survive. At school, classmates whispered. Some admired him. Others avoided him entirely. Reporters camped outside his house. News vans idled near his driveway. Michael's father, a small business owner, was humiliated. He'd raised a bright, polite boy, and now the police were calling his son a cyber terrorist. The media didn't understand nuance. They didn't care that his attacks had no financial motive, that he hadn't stolen or destroyed data. To them, he was a symbol of the new digital threat, faceless, uncontrollable, unstoppable. Governments, too, were terrified. If a teenager could do this, what could a hostile nation accomplish? The FBI, RCMP, and even the CIA began studying the mafiaboy case as a national security event. U.S. senators held hearings. They questioned tech CEOs under oath. Why can a kid with a modem bring down your entire business? Executives had no answer. Billions had been spent building the internet, but no one had thought to build armor for it. And so, in a way, Michael didn't just expose websites, he exposed the truth. That the world's most connected system was built on trust. And trust, he had proven, was fragile. When his trial began, the courtroom filled with spectators expecting a criminal mastermind. Instead, they saw a teenager barely tall enough for the witness stand. His defense was simple. He hadn't known it would go this far. He didn't deny the attacks. He admitted everything. He'd learned to hack not from some underground mentor, but from online tutorials, open forums, message boards, libraries. He didn't invent the weapons he used. He simply assembled them. The prosecutor described him as dangerous. The judge saw something else, a symptom, a warning of a future that had already arrived. In 2001, Michael Kaus was sentenced to 8 months in juvenile detention, 1 year of probation, and a small fine. By then, the world had changed because of him. Yahoo and CNN rebuilt their infrastructures. The FBI formed new cybercrime units. Universities rewrote their security protocols. And for the first time, companies began hiring ethical hackers, the same kind of kids who might have once been arrested to test their systems before real criminals did. Michael had shown the world what a teenager could break. Now governments were racing to find someone who could fix it. But as for Michael, he would spend years living under the shadow of the name Mafia Boy. He couldn't go online without harassment. He couldn't get a job without suspicion. His identity, the very thing he built, became the thing that imprisoned him. He later said in interviews, "When you're 15, you don't think about consequences. You just want to see what happens when you push the button." He pushed it, and the world changed. Yet beneath the headlines and courtroom verdicts, there's something haunting about his story. Because Michael wasn't evil, he was curious. And curiosity, the same trait that powers innovation, science, and progress, had crossed an invisible line. He showed that our greatest strength as humans, our hunger to understand, can also be our most dangerous flaw. By the time he was released, the name Mafia Boy had become both a warning and a prophecy. He had cracked the future open, and no one could close it again. But the internet didn't learn the lesson it should have. Because within a decade, new names, anonymous, lulsec, shadow brokers would rise, each bigger and bolder than the last. And every time the world asked, how could this happen again? The answer always led back to a 15-year-old kid in a snowy Montreal bedroom. When Mafia Boy walked out of juvenile detention in 2002, the world outside was unrecognizable. Not because technology had changed, but because he had changed it. In his absence, cybersecurity had become a global obsession. Governments funded new agencies. Corporations hired digital guards. The internet, once a lawless playground, had become a fortress under construction. And the boy who triggered it all was quietly trying to rebuild his own life. He was no longer the smirking kid who'd watched Yahoo collapse on his flickering monitor. The notoriety had burned that out of him. When Michael spoke about it years later, there was no pride in his voice, just disbelief. He hadn't set out to become infamous. He'd wanted to understand how far the code could stretch before it broke. He didn't realize the answer would be the entire world. Before Mafia Boy, cybercrime was a myth, a sci-fi headline. After him, it was national security policy. Governments realized wars wouldn't just be fought on land, air, or sea. They'd be fought through cables and code. Michael's attacks had lasted just days, but the ripple lasted decades. Within 5 years, entire defense departments were hiring former hackers to build cyber commands. The U.S. formed the National Cybersecurity Division in 2003. Canada created the CSE, Cyber Threat Response Unit. Private firms like McAfee and Symantec exploded into billion-dollar industries overnight. All because a 15-year-old proved the internet could bleed. But fame, even accidental fame, is a heavy ghost to live with. For years, Michael couldn't escape Mafia Boy. Whenever a new cyber attack made headlines, reporters called him for comment. Whenever a hacker was arrested, tabloids printed, "Is this the next Mafia Boy?" He didn't want to be a symbol. He wanted to be forgotten, but the world wouldn't let him. He struggled with that paradox, the idea that one mistake could define him forever. He was neither hero nor villain. He was a mirror, reflecting a world that had underestimated its own creation. And though he never returned to hacking, he never abandoned technology. He started speaking at conferences, advocating for cybersecurity awareness. He warned companies that another him was out there, someone younger, smarter, hungrier, curious enough to press enter without thinking twice. He became, in a way, the conscience of the digital age he once disrupted. In 2008, Michael wrote a book titled Mafia Boy: How I Cracked the Internet and Why It's Still Broken. It wasn't a confession, it was a warning. In its pages, he described how little had changed since his attack. Sure, servers were faster, firewalls stronger, but the mindset, still fragile, still reactive, still believing the next threat would come with a warning label. He wrote, "The internet is not a place, it's a heartbeat, and it only takes one skipped beat to kill it." That quote became prophetic, because over the next decade, new names emerged from the digital underworld. Anonymous, Lulzsec, Lazarus, Conti, shadow brokers. Each one was an echo of Mafia Boy, bigger, louder, more dangerous. Each one testing the boundaries between mischief and catastrophe. They weren't just breaking into websites now. They were shutting down hospitals, hijacking pipelines, interfering in elections. The game Michael once played for fun had evolved into global warfare. There's a cruel symmetry to Michael's story. The same act that ruined his life also gave him purpose. He became a speaker, a consultant, even an advisor on cybersecurity reform. He spoke to students, to CEOs, to governments, the same people who once feared him. He told them that hackers weren't monsters hiding in basements. They were thinkers, builders, people who wanted to understand systems, even if they sometimes broke them along the way. And he warned that punishing curiosity only drives it underground. That the next Mafia Boy might not stop at taking down Yahoo. He might take down a power grid, or a stock exchange, or a hospital network mid-surgery. Because every generation creates its own kind of hacker. And every hacker carries the same question. What happens if I push this button? Today, Michael Kelsey lives quietly in Montreal. He runs a cybersecurity company, protecting the very kind of corporations he once unknowingly crippled. He doesn't use the name mafiaboy anymore. But he can't escape it either. It's carved into the internet's mythology, the ghost in the code. If you ask him about it now, he'll smile and shake his head. He'll tell you he was just a kid who got in way over his head. But deep down, he knows the truth. He was more than that. He was the first domino in a chain that still hasn't stopped falling. When the FBI closed his case, one agent reportedly said, "He didn't just hack Yahoo, he hacked the future." And maybe that's the most accurate way to describe it. Because Michael Kelsey didn't destroy the internet. He woke it up. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe for more real stories from the digital world. Don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss what's next.